What is up, New York Giants fans, Big Blue Nation? It's Robin Donald. This is Nerding Out Sports, and we've got some breaking news coming out here from Talking Giants. They put it out on Twitter. It's from Mike Silver. Wink Martindale is out of the running for Colts head coach, which means he's back. We got our defensive coordinator, our assistant coach, to Brian Dable. He is back. Wink is officially going to be in the fold for the New York Giants in 2023. Donald, how are we feeling right now?
Oh, what a relief. What a relief. Oh, man. He was, he was so important. For me, he's the assistant of the year. He did an unbelievable job. So relieved he's back. He did say that he felt that um, the Giants is a destination rather than a stepping stone. He loved it. He loves being here. He wants to build something here, and he's proven that by staying. I don't know the details of him staying. I don't know whether the Colts have moved on or whether he backed out. I'm sure we'll find out very soon. But uh, we only just found out this news literally 46 seconds ago. So it's all kind of new, but it's very, very good news. It's a huge relief. And now we can build towards the offseason because we don't need to go and start a new defensive system. We've got our defensive system. It's going to be now looking to acquire guys in the offseason that can fit his system. Blitz ready guys, man corners, dudes that are good in man coverage, and dudes that are really good pass rushers. Bring them in and bring in a good linebacker. A cover linebacker would be good. Someone that can actually cover dudes would be freaking phenomenal because I've not seen that in a long time as a Giant fan. But um, you there now we have a good start to stepping stone towards getting better in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it that he was your untouchable of the two coaches that were in line to get head coaching positions this offseason. The other right now is Kafka, who still could be on the move. We don't know where that's going just yet, but that's another wait and see game. I don't think it's going to be announced until after the Super Bowl, so it might happen, it might not happen, but getting Wink back is huge because, like you said, our defense would have been probably the worst in the league if it was under any other coach, right? Even if Patrick Graham was still the coach, it wouldn't have maybe not been the worst, but it wouldn't have been very good. The fact that Wink was able to get so much production out of so many players, unlikely players, that's the way he brings the blitzes every single time. Jihad Ward played well. Kayvon Thibodeau had a great rookie year. Even Aziz in the handful of games he was in there. I mean, the way they were able to get pressure from different positions, get different guys to step up, that's on coaching because so many players that were just cast aside by other teams became solid, at least solid for us. Now, the linebacker position aside, we got production from a lot of different players at a lot of positions. So I'm very, very happy that Wink is back. And it only helps when you're trying to grow a team after a really good first year of a rebuild. Now you keep at least one of those coaches back. I'm hoping they're both back. But if you keep Wink, the defense can grow. Now Joe Shane can get to work and what players he wants in the draft on the defensive side of the ball. If there's anybody that can cost kind of cheap in free agency, who he wants to bring back from our potential free agents, now they can really get to work. So it is a huge deal. Huge deal if the Colts did not get the guy they may have wanted. But maybe it's Wink saying, you know what? I want to be here, which is even more special if that was the case because culture, there's that word again, there's a culture here. And that is still important. People want to knock it because Dave Gettleman always said culture, 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 but there is something building here. And if Wink's staying, I bring it back to when Patrick Graham wanted to stay with Joe Judge for that extra year. I like it. I love it. Glad he's back. And now we just move forward with this defense.
Yeah, let's go, man. Now we need to have a look and see which people are good fit in the draft coming up and also free agency. So we'll have to really do a deep dive now that we are assured that we've got our guy back. Wink just was so important. There's no question about it. So important to the culture, so important to the development of these guys. We already saw Aziz do pretty well. You saw Kayvon really start to develop as the year progressed. So dudes like Hattie Ward have an impact because he's a wink guy. And you saw Adoree Jackson really flourish as perfect man coverage guy. Great number one corner for us. Did a good job. X-Man did well too. Even Ximenez, who has a positive start in the first opening few games of the year, even though he disappeared off the face of the earth. A lot of guys just kind of just fit really well with the way he schemed blitzes, etc. So I'm excited to see who we can look at in the draft that might fit his system, and so we can now really get into that. I'm looking forward to really scouting those positions. I watched the Senior Bowl. I streamed the Senior Bowl. I did some work on some of the dudes who did well there. And I'll certainly do a bit more of a deep dive for us as the offseason progresses.
I think the two positions that you're going to look at mainly to improve on for us right now, linebacker is one, might even be two. Like linebacker might be A and B, and then you really do need a second corner on the outside along with Adoree Jackson, because while I do think Flott is going to get better, I think he's more inside, in the slot, Flott in the slot. Darnay Holmes will be here probably next year. If not, I don't really care, but he's a nickel corner. He's not an outside guy. So they need to get that outside corner to go along with Adoree Jackson, because then if you can shut down the top two receivers, that's going to allow that pass rush to get home. With the way Wink blitzes, that you really do need that. You need that secondary to be tip top. And you also need linebackers that can cover, which we don't have. So linebackers got to be priority one. And then I would look at cornerback as well. Luckily for us, there are some really good corners in this draft class that could potentially slip to the second round, maybe even the third. And I think they might have to look at linebacker in round one, depending on what they do at receiver. There's so many revolving parts, which makes this so exciting for us as fans, that we can just scout so many different positions and think, what are they going to do here? Do they go receiver or linebacker in round one, which then means they're going to go the other position in round two. So a lot of questions, but defensively, linebacker, cornerback, you get those two positions locked down, and this defense is going to take the next step forward, a very big step forward, in my opinion.
Have you checked out some of the players that you're kind of excited about in the draft that could be worth looking at?
Well, for the defensive side of the ball, there's linebacker-wise, I love Trenton Simpson. I think he's a guy that would fit Wink's system very well, because he can play as a pass rusher. He can play as a coverage guy. Some people have kind of labeled him like an Isaiah Simmons type. I don't really see it. He has definitely potential to get better, but he would be my top guy. There's a couple of guys that could potentially fall to round 2 or 3, like an Owen Pappoe is in there as well. I'm
interested in Pappoe, actually.
I like him a lot. And Jack Campbell's another guy that I know Alex, your co-host from Big Blue in the Bronx, has been highlighting a lot. I love Jack Campbell as well. Henry To'oto, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's another guy. And then, of course, there's Noah Sewell. Those are like the top of the group, in my opinion. And then you have other players like Day and Henley that could fall, that could potentially come in. But I don't want like a 4th or 5th round guy starting for us again, because that's what we got ourselves into this year with McFadden and then having to pick up guys off the scrap heap. So they need to address this. If they're going to do it, it needs to be round 1, 2, or 3 that they get the linebacker.
I thought South Carolina, Darius Rush, the corner, had a very good Senior Bowl practice and a solid Senior Bowl. I think he stood out to me. And if you're looking at corners, another one is QB Kelly. He actually looked decent too. He was all over his dudes, decent coverage skills. He's from Stanford, so we can maybe keep an eye out on him. Those are just two corners that immediately jump to mind. And obviously, we'll get into the offensive end. I thought Illinois' Sidney Brown was okay. So we can keep an eye on these dudes in Senior Bowl that should be had later on in the draft, or maybe the second or third rounds. So those are just from immediate positions of needs. But there were some other ones that did well. McDonald, the edge. McDonald, the edge was fairly good in practice. I liked him. And another one, Derek Hall of Auburn, the edge. He actually had a pretty solid camp at Senior Bowl as well. So yeah, there was some really interesting dudes that we can really do work on. But I was mostly working on the guards, so obviously offensive guards. So when we do another podcast and look at the offensive side of the ball, we'll go into that. But I'm excited that I wasn't realizing the depth of some of the talent that's available for the offensive line. So there is plenty of talent and there's plenty of picks for us, which is great. I'm sure you're doing the same thing. PFF mock drafts.
Yep.
Been firing through them. But yeah, I like the talent in the middle rounds. There's some good ones.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that sticks out to me the most is positions of need for us is where the draft is kind of deep, with the exception of maybe linebacker, because I don't know how many number one quality linebackers are in this draft class, which is why
linebacker draft,
right,
not a great linebacker draft.
Which is why I think they have to address that early. Whether round 1 or 2, it has to be addressed, unless someone like a Papo were to fall to round 3, then maybe you jump on it, or even a Jack Campbell, but he seems to be rising aboard. So, but cornerback is deep. You mentioned Blue Kelly. I like him. And a lot of mock drafts, they have him being a 3rd or 4th round pick. And I'm like, that could be one of those maybe Tariq Woolen type of picks that nobody sees coming and no one thinks is going to be that big of an impact, but could. I'm not saying he will be, but you never know anymore. You never know what player is going to step up and who's not going to step up. Yeah. So I like him a lot. I like Mekhi Gardner as well. There's a lot of guys that could slip there in that 3rd or 4th round area that we can get and potentially start for us on the outside.
I thought Darius Rush impressed me more than Kelly, and just in my opinion, just because he had an interception during 1-on-1 drills and jumped a couple of routes, and he did well. So he's kind of one of my favorite corners at the moment to keep an eye out on, Darius Rush.
Right, and aside from the top guys, you know, we know who the top guys are: Porter, Smith, Witherspoon, Forbes. Like those, I mean, Clark Phillips, Christian. There's a lot of good corners. Like if you just look at the list, I'm looking at it now. Who PFN has like the top 6 guys. I mean, these players are going to fall because there's so many quarterback needy teams. There's receiver needy teams. There's teams that need offensive line. Cornerback is this is a very healthy cornerback class. So these guys are going to slip to round 2, round 3. And that's where the Giants can really pounce because they have 2 third-round picks. They have their 2nd, and they have their 4th. Someone could be there. You know, Jalen Jones is another guy that I like. So there's potential to really get a steal in these, 2nd to maybe 4th round where you can find that kind of blue chip player in a position that you really need. So this is where I'm really, really excited. I love this cornerback class, and it's at the right time because we need maybe multiple corners. We need a number 2, and we might need someone to replace Darnay Holmes. I really don't think he's going to be there next year. Which is fine.
If a Simpson or a Jordan Addison isn't available when we get to where we are in the 1st round, I would consider trading down to the end of the 1st round or even maybe right at the start of the 2nd, because there's kind of a big drop off after like the 2nd or 3rd round in terms of when we pick. You know what I mean? Because we're at the tail end of each draft. There's some really nice talent in the 2nd and 3rd round, which I don't think there's a massive difference between the talent early 2nd round, late 1st round. I think a lot of people are going to drop, and I would take advantage of the value and maybe accrue some more draft assets if say your number 1 target at receiver isn't available, because as I say, I think it's kind of top heavy, and then everyone else is kind of the same level. So you might want to look at the value aspect too. But as I say, we'll get into all that. We've got so much time, but I'm already excited. You can
Yeah.
tell. I'm palpably excited about the draft and the whole thing, and I don't have any concerns now because I was really worried about Wing Martindale. Um, as I say, I would have given him a contract, giving him head coach money to be our DC for the foreseeable. I just love what he's done. I think he's done an incredible job. Incredible job.
That could be what they're doing because there's the coaches' salaries don't count against the cap. So they
Right.
could just be paying him whatever to say, we want to keep you here at least for another year, 2 years. This way we can see this thing out. And then if he does get another opportunity, let's say he's here for 2 more years, guaranteed, no questions asked. And the defense, we add to it in the draft and free agency, whatever, and it goes to becoming top 10, right? Maybe right at
Yep.
the outside of the top 10, even if it's top 12. He's going to get a head coaching opportunity again in 2 more years. But I think they need, for the sake of continuity, the sake of building this thing the right way, they need to keep the staff in place. But it also goes back to a previous point we made a few shows ago. It tells you how far this team has come, that in 1 year, both of our coordinators are interviewing, or at least one was, for a head coaching position. That's very important, which is why I want everyone to be back next year. I know a lot of people think that, and you're right when you say that Dable is the offensive mind here, but that's why I also want Kafka back, because it's so important to keep building this the right way. We saw a lot of improvements late last season in the offense. The defense was pretty steady from start to finish. Nothing was really different from the start to the end of the season. They played pretty similar the whole way through, but you saw a lot of different players make improvements as the season went on. And I want to see more of that. So I think it's huge that Wink is back. Hopefully Kafka is the one that stays next. But I want them here for the next couple of seasons because that's how you grow. That's how you become from a rebuilding team to a legitimate contender. We're not there yet. We're still not a legitimate contender that's going to say this team can go on a run for the Super Bowl. But the fact that we were in the playoffs, teams want our coaches, we're close. We're closer than we thought we would be after one season. And that's huge. So it's we need these guys back for at least another year, 2 years to really see this thing come to fruition.
Exactly, man. I'm absolutely 100% with you. It's a good starting spot. I just wonder what's going to happen with Kafka.
I think he might take the job. I'm like the Chiefs, the staff, Mahomes is talking him up. Reed was talking up. It's like they want him to go take the job, which would be great for him. But I don't know why Arizona would be targeting him necessarily, because it wasn't like our offense was that good. But maybe they think, well, you see what he was able to do with Daniel Jones. Can he do that with Kyler Murray? I'm not sure. But hey, if that's what the Cardinals want to do, and if Kafka takes the job, then I'll be happy for him. And I'm guessing this would just be Dable's offense. Maybe they promote Tierney to offensive coordinator, but we'll have to wait and see then. That's going to be coming after the Super Bowl, apparently. That's the news. We'll be waiting until after Sunday to find out where Kafka goes, if he stays or if he does leave.
Okay, so according to Jeremy Fowler, Jay Fowler, ESPN, Colts begin narrowing down the field. Mike Kafka, who's still a finalist in Arizona, is out there running in Indy, as is Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan and Giants Wink Martindale, according to Mike Silver. So Indy's long winding search appears closer. I wonder who Indy's coach is going to be. I would laugh if it's Jeff Saturday. That would be absolutely hilarious. But I think Kafka could end up in Arizona because
it could be a good situation for him because, he's a young coach.
And he's a good offensive mind, and he's an innovative offensive mind. Maybe he could unlock something in Kyler Murray.
And there are more weapons there in Arizona, a lot more than what we had here. So
a lot more.
They do see. I'm sure they see the potential. I just don't want him to leave. I'm selfish. I don't want him to leave.
No, I just think that if he was, I wouldn't. Between the two, I just wouldn't lose any sleep over it. Not that he was a bad coach or anything like that. It was just that, Tierney can step in his place, and it'll be Dable's offense. And I don't think it would be a massive step back for Daniel Jones. It's still going to be similar concepts, similar schematic concepts. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. And I think Shea Tierney do a very, very good job. He did a really good job as a quarterback coach. So I'm not writing off Kafka coming back yet. I'm just saying that if that was to happen, it's not the end of the world. For me, Wink was the bigger deal because it would then take a whole new defensive scheme and then a whole new thing, and you didn't want to really go through all that. Although Jerome Henderson is really turning heads as our defensive back coach.
Got praise from Bradbury.
Yes, he could be a future OC. DC. He could be a very future defensive coordinator. He could be a very, very good one down the line.
Now, I want to give you a question here. Let's say Kafka does leave. There's been some rumors that Davis Webb could retire and get into the coaching realm. So if Kafka's gone, you would assume Tierney gets the job as OC. Would you then maybe give Davis Webb the quarterback coach?
I mean, there'd be a seamless transition. But do you want someone who's never done that before looking after our prized asset?
That is true.
I'd probably go with experience, but I would give him maybe the assistant quarterback coach role, you know what I mean, where he can learn under someone. But I think Davis Webb will eventually be a very good coach. I think that's basically kind of what he's been doing anyway over the last few years, unofficially, if you know what I mean. So I think he is going to retire. I think he's going to go into that field, but I would certainly have him as an assistant rather than the main job just yet. He can learn under someone and then eventually take the job.
I'm kind of thinking of similar to what Philly's doing with Alex Tanney. He's like their quality control coach or something like that, but potentially, could follow that same realm. Guys that weren't really anything special at the NFL level playing wise, but they got a great football mind that can translate well into the coaching realm. So it's something that I've been thinking about. If Kafka were to leave, it's almost guaranteed that Tierney's going to get that job as offensive coordinator. And then you got to replace him as quarterback coach, and you can have your third string quarterback who's, like you said, basically been coaching because he's just sitting on the sidelines. He's inactive for most games anyway. He's in the room with Daniel Jones. He knows Daniel Jones very well. So there's some potential there to maybe give him at least the assistant, get him into that coaching realm, because at this point, I don't think anyone's going to pick him up to be a backup. And if anything, he's going to be a practice squad quarterback anyway. So he might just want to take that next step into coaching. So it's something that I've been thinking about, at least. If Kafka were to go, that's a likely scenario, or at least a possibility that the Giants might entertain.
No, I think it makes sense.
But let's stay on topic for the offense for just a bit, because last week we talked about it, and we brought it up at the end of the show, and it's been something that's been going around Twitter. Some people, I don't necessarily advocate for this, but would you trade, if the opportunity were to come, the first round pick for a proven wide receiver such as a T. Higgins or a Brandon Ayuk? Because that's something that's been hot on Twitter, T. Higgins especially. Would you give up the number one pick for one of those guys?
Under no circumstances. I love T. Higgins. I think he's going to be a really good number one if he is to be moved on. But I think what they're going to do is I think they're going to negotiate a contract and keep him in Cincy. But if he was made available, I wouldn't do it, purely because the Giants are not in that position yet. They've got a lot of holes to fill. They've got a lot of positions that they need to address. They also need to sort out the money allocation to each position. And we're just not in that position yet, because we're not a number one receiver away from winning a title or winning a Super Bowl or even making a championship game. We're not a receiver away. We got work to do. So what I would do is, this is another year forward where we focus on the draft and maybe make some smart acquisitions in free agency. There could be someone that could be of interest to us. that could maybe help us move us on a little bit. Just off the top of my head, like dudes like DJ Chark will be available. Maybe you can get something out of him on a short-term deal, maybe a cheap 1-year deal. Maybe see because he's got speed and he's had like one good season, but he's got injury history. He could be a scheme fit. Maybe like we'll go through the UFAs, but I think that's what we need to do. Is maybe a smaller deal for a receiver and focus in the draft. There's some good guys in the draft, man. We've talked about Jordan Addison. He could be someone. Jaden Reed could be someone. There's some good receivers that. I mean, which receivers do you like in the draft, for instance?
Well, aside from the top guys, Jackson Smith-Njigba's there. Quentin Johnson, to me, he was like the guy that I thought could be there in the late 20s, but he has stormed up the draft class. Like he's like the top receiver now in a lot of people's minds, where he was maybe like the third or fourth behind Addison, Smith-Njigba, even Zay Flowers. I like Jalen Hyatt, but he's more of just a speed guy.
Yeah,
he's just kind of like he's going to run deep and you're going to use his speed. Parker Washington, someone that could be there. I like A.T. Perry a lot. That's someone that can be there even in the third. Kind of like the corners, these guys could slip. But there are a lot more receiver-needy teams that are going to take these guys. So your earlier point about trading the first-round pick, trade down and getting more assets, maybe like an extra second, where you can get more value. Because I doubt Johnston, Addison, or Smith-Njigba is going to be there at 25. And if they are, you probably snag them. But there is a very good possibility the guys that you want, like that could be starters on day one at two positions, linebacker and receiver, like you said, might not be there. So trading down could be the right move because you can still get some really good value at corner and receiver. It's just the linebacker position that I am worried about. But I like this receiver class in the second and third round a little bit more than I like the top guys because I don't know if any of these players are like Devonta Smith. I don't know if any of these guys in this draft class are going to be a Devonta Smith or Justin Jefferson or something like that. I think they're going to be good. I don't know if they're guys that I would take at 25, which has led me to think about, well, instead of getting the unproven rookie, if the trade were to be there to give up 25 for a Brandon Ayuk, who's still very young, I would at least entertain it, but I completely agree with you that we are not a number one receiver away.
No,
so that's why
I just wouldn't give up valuable capital for. Dude, there's so many nice receivers, and that was what was really noticeable to me during the Senior Bowl was guys like Anai Josevis of Princeton. That's a small school; it's not really a school that you associate with good collegiate football players, but he is a good receiver. And he's rated in the round 5 or 6, right? Then you've got who I love, Tank Dell of Houston. Dude, he is absolutely electric. I think he actually stole the show. For me, he was the best receiver in all Senior Bowl camp. He never saw much in the Senior Bowl at all, but in the practices and the one-on-one drills, holy hell, he looks great. He's rated in the second round. Rashee Rice, another second-round talent, excellent looking player. Got Booty. He's someone who's been of interest. I really like Mike Wilson of Stanford. He had a very good Senior Bowl. So already we've mentioned a ton, and we've not even gotten into Mingo yet, who I'm a little bit iffy on. But he's around 4 talent. There is plenty of good receivers in there, man. You could go in the 3rd or 4th round and pick up some nice receivers. That's why I even would think about trading down from in the 1st round, accrue extra picks in the 2nd and 3rd, and you can really accrue a couple of receivers in there. And, if you brought in a Tank Dell, I would be delighted. He's so fast and he's exciting. He's a dude that would be a good scheme fit. He's a slot dude, runs really good routes, and insanely fast guy. So, there's some real talent there that I would be going for I want speed. I want breakaway speed, and also that's not really T Higgins' thing. He's more of a 50-50 guy.
Right.
So I kind of want a little bit more breakaway speed over the top. But I mean, T Higgins has got the height, and they obviously just amazing cat, beautiful, beautiful receiver. You want his size and stuff like that. I'm just thinking that if you're going to give up first round draft assets, your team needs to be closer. So why wouldn't we just do what the Eagles did, where they further developed, got Devontae Smith in the draft, etc. And then the next year, then they made that big trade for the guy that put them over the top, AJ Brown. That's what I would do. Let's go and focus this year on the draft and incrementally improving, focusing on the positions like linebacker and corner, safety, and then offseason after, make that trade for your number one receiver, if that puts you over the top. If that puts you over the top, because you never know. Maybe the dude that we draft might turn into what we're looking for anyway, like in an Odell Beckham Jr. But I don't see any Odell Beckhams in this draft. But hey, you never know. There's that's my plan. I just focus on the draft, in my opinion.
No, I'm with you on it. There was a part in my brain that I was like, Brandon Ayuk is special. That's a guy that I would be willing, maybe in another year's time, maybe not right now, because again, we're not a receiver away. We weren't a receiver away at the trade deadline. We're not a receiver away right now. But he's the only one out of the two that I would be like, I would give up a first round pick for, but it would take more than just a first. You'd have to give up a first, maybe a third, even a future pick down the line. He's like 24. So he's still got plenty of chances to grow, and he's already really good right now. So it was something that's been brought up a lot from Giants Twitter. Thought it'd be good to bring up right now, but I do agree with you. The best way to build this offense is through the draft. And I do believe that trading down would be the smartest scenario because, again, we're picking 25th. A lot of that top-tier talent isn't going to be there, but you don't want to reach in the first round for a receiver, but you can get one of those guys if you get an extra second. You can get a receiver and a corner in the second and do the same in the third, because assuming a team trades back into the first, you get their second and maybe even their third for the first-round pick. You got 3 third-rounders, 2 second-rounders. You can build a really solid foundation with those picks right there instead of just having the first-round pick, the second-round pick, and the 2 thirds. You're getting more picks, and with this deep draft class at 2 very big positions, you're going to get talent, and you're going to add to this roster. So that might be the route that Joe Schoen takes. We'll wait and see, of course. We got months to go, but it's a lot closer than people might think. League's coming to an end in a few days. The offseason will be right afterwards. And it's going to be draft time, man. I'm very excited.
I mean, I can see why we would consider trading for a receiver, because the UFAs in the receiving position aren't great. So I mentioned DJ Chark. He's actually one of the better ones. The other ones, Marvin Jones, more of a slot guy. You don't see him as an option. Julio Jones is too old. Byron Pringle, don't think so. Not for me. Alan Lazard, that's someone that maybe can consider, but maybe Jacoby Myers, New England, maybe put him in a better situation. He got 800 yards receiving last year. Let's see, Juju Smith-Schuster, he's underrated. He's having a very good year. That was a very smart signing from Kansas City. It's just his injury history. He's a good receiver, though. 933 yards receiving this year. Jarvis Landry, no. N'Keal Harry, probably not. See, that's kind of it. Then Sterling Shepard, that's a no-go in my opinion. We need to get younger and healthier. Nelson Aguilar, I'm not interested in him. I mean, which names? I mean, for me, it would be DJ Chark and maybe Alan Lazard and possibly Jacoby Myers and Juju. After that, no thank you.
I mean, yeah, at that point you're thinking just bring back Darius Slayton.
One guy I forgot, McCole Hardman. I love McCole Hardman.
Fast. Yeah, that's a guy that could fit this offense pretty well.
Yeah. He'd be great.
But outside of the obvious name that everyone's been throwing around since that we've been throwing around, that I've been throwing around, is Odell, which I don't think is going to happen at this point. So
Mhm.
it's not a great class of free agents, and we don't really have the money because you mentioned it earlier. They got to allocate it. The quarterback has to get paid. The running back has to get paid. And then you got to fill out the rest of the. You got to hold aside like what, $12 million for the draft picks, which actually could be less if you trade back, so that could help as well. That's why, again, the cap, that could be a big reason why they potentially trade back. I don't think we sign anybody that's going to get significant money. So Myers is out of the running. Odell's out of the running. I think Slayton might be brought back if he's back for cheap. They're going to have to pay Hodgins because someone's going to try to get him from us. He's a restricted free agent. So, yeah, they got a lot of decisions there, which is why trading your first round for a receiver isn't smart yet. But Buffalo did it, but they waited until they were a receiver away, and they got Stephon Diggs. Philadelphia, like you mentioned, they drafted Smith. Then they went and traded for A.J. Brown. Now look at them. They're in the freaking Super Bowl. So
what we could do is we could contact Philadelphia and say, give us Quez Watkins. And we could work out a deal. Maybe someone who's a good slot guy that isn't getting a big role on a great team like Philadelphia because they've got all the targets going elsewhere, like Goddard and A.J. Brown and of course Devontae Smith. Maybe that opens up room for us to maybe acquire Quez Watkins, who I think if you gave him a bigger role would actually do a really good job. He's really fast, good receiver, good route runner. I think he'd be a good scheme fit. That's someone that I'd keep an eye out on. But would Philadelphia want to trade with the Giants? Probably not.
I mean, they traded with Dallas a couple of years ago, so anything's possible.
Yeah, you never know. It's not impossible. Maybe we use one of our later round picks to maybe acquire him. It might be a smart trade. That would be something worth considering. But I think Mecole Hardman would make sense. But I can't see him being allowed to leave if I were Kansas City.
No, they're seeing just even without Tyreek Hill, because of who they have at quarterback, he's making Juju Smith-Schuster looks as good as I've ever seen him. Hardman's still a very good target, and they're getting use out of Kadarius Toney. Like they're
and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who I like. I like Scantling.
They got playmakers there, and of course they got the best quarterback in football. So if you can get a Hardman, if you can pry him away from Kansas City and make sure they don't bring him back, and if he's available, you can get him. Great, but again, you got to think about the money. Do they want to pay what might be a hefty price for a player like that? I don't know if they do that yet. So this is why, even though we have cap space, and look, we got the third most cap space in the league right now, it's gonna dwindle quickly. Once Jones is back and once Barkley's back, because I do think they will be back, we're gonna have very little cap space to work with before they start making extensions and restructuring contracts, which will have to be done. But it's not as much as you think, because the two players that have to be back, no questions asked, are going to take up a huge chunk of that cap space. So just keep that in mind when people, say we can go sign this guy. I know people, Edwards, linebacker free agent from Buffalo. I would love him. Can't afford him.
Yeah, he'd be a dream.
So there's a lot.
If I were the Giants, I would look at free agent linebacker, because I don't know about the depth at linebacker in the draft. That's one of the positions where there's no great draft for depth at Mike linebacker. So maybe that's something that you want to allocate your resources to in free agency and then spend the rest in the draft.
That is possible. There's actually a pretty, well, outside of Edwards, I think the dude from Cincy, Pratt, who's yelling at, who was caught yelling at, I think who was the guy that pushed Mahomes out of bounds? Was that Osai?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was yelling at him in the locker room, so that's kind of giving him a bad look as he goes.
Yeah, I don't know why he was yelling at him. That was a shitty move, but yeah, he's had a good year.
He's a good player.
Yeah, he's a good player. I'm worth considering that.
So maybe they do that because, like we mentioned before, the linebacker, which is a huge need for us, the class is kind of thin outside of like those top 4 guys that we mentioned. Because Simpson will probably be gone in the top 20 at the least. Yeah. And maybe you can get a guy like Owen Papo in the third, which would be a dream for me because I think he's a very good player.
Yeah.
I think, but the way Jack Campbell's storming up draft classes and going up the list, he'll be gone as well. So you might have to get lucky and hope that somebody falls. So maybe out of the major positions of need, linebacker could be the one they address in free agency. Get a veteran in here, kind of like a Blake Martinez that can step into that role and be your number one Mike linebacker, because we don't have one, and we can't go another year relying on Jalen Smith and moving Landon Collins to linebacker or take Crowder. We can't have another year like that. We have to get a legit number one, and he has to stay here, of course.
Agreed.
Now, we talked about the Eagles. We talked about the Chiefs. It's only time that we get to our preview of the big one. The Super Bowl is coming up in just a couple of days. As Giants fans, of course, we don't want to see Philly win. However, our playoff picks, I believe because of the AFC Championship game, you picked it correctly. I didn't. We're tied.
Ooh.
I had one wrong pick, and that was the Cowboys. I thought the Cowboys would lose to the Bucks. Every other pick I had was correct until the AFC Championship game. I picked the Bengals. You picked the Chiefs. So if we have different picks for this Super Bowl, our playoff picks will come down to the very last game. So before we get into those picks, initial thoughts on the Super Bowl here. Who do you think has the advantages, offense, defense, coaching? Where would you rank each team there, or both teams?
Ooh. I'm giving the coaching edge obviously to Kansas City. I definitely disagree with Love, though, that Nick Sirianni is just riding on the coattails of his players. That's just a nonsense statement. He's a good coach. But I'm always going to go with Andy Reid. And Spags has schemed many Super Bowl teams now at this stage, including Giants Super Bowl. So this dude is a legit defensive coordinator. I like Kansas City's defense. So don't forget, I know their offense gets a lot of headlines, but their defense has some good players too. Really good players. They had a really good draft this year, a very productive draft. Much more productive than the Giants draft. Let's be absolutely fair.
Yeah.
Like, they had a far more productive draft. They kept everyone healthy, and they for the most part, they all balled out.
Yeah.
They're getting production in the 7th round. At running back, I mean, they just did so freaking well. Their general manager is fantastic. Great coaching staff. So yeah, I give the coaching staff edge to the Chiefs. Yeah, let's do that. We'll do a position by position breakdown where you give the edge. So I'm giving the coaching staff edge to the Chiefs. Where do you rank them? How would you do it?
Yeah, for coaches, I would go Kansas City just simply from experience. Andy Reid has it over Sirianni, but Sirianni's climbing that ladder quickly. You know, he's a great coach. I don't know what Julian Love was talking about, and apparently they were giving him crap in their group chat. The DBs were. It was like that's their guy. Of course, they're going to ride with Adoree Jackson, but Julian Love. But Adoree Jackson was saying that they don't agree with that because Sirianni is a good coach. So good to see some accountability from the Giants players.
It looked as a loser mentality, in my opinion. I don't like that.
Wasn't needed. Just say he's a good coach. That's it.
Exactly. You don't. They also beat the living pants off us, so it's really hard to talk. You know what I mean? Okay, so yeah, we'll go there. I agree with you there. Quarterback, Patrick Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts. There's no way that I'm going to say anything other than a potential GOAT in Patrick Mahomes, who could already be in the argument of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. You could make that argument with his success already at this stage. Multiple MVP. He's been to 5 AFC championship games now already in his young career. And this could be his second Super Bowl ring. I want this to happen for him. I love Patrick Mahomes. I'm not afraid to say it. I love him. I absolutely love watching him. It's an honor to watch the way he plays, man. It's just, we're privileged that we've seen the GOAT already in Tom Brady, the GOAT already in Eli Manning. I had to include that. The GOAT already in Peyton Manning. And now you could make a legit argument that you've got a future GOAT and Patrick Mahomes. We're seeing some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time over this last decade. It's truly amazing, actually, when you think about it. That doesn't happen often, but this is a great era for the NFL. And Patrick Mahomes is amazing. He's so good on the run. He's so good, like just creating out of the pocket. His arm angles are insane. I've never seen anything like it. You can shoot underhand. You can throw sidearm. You can throw overarm. And that's obviously from his baseball heritage. You can throw a fastball, but he can also throw a nice sidearm. You can even throw a curveball in there too, and all of it is pinpoint accuracy. And I've never seen anything like it, because normally every other quarterback who would try that ball's going into the stands, but he puts it absolutely dead on, man. I mean, the touchdown that he threw in the AFC Championship, where he had the eye of a needle to get in there. It was an outrageous throw, and that's just what he does. And he did it with one leg as well. So I know that sometimes he gets a bit of hate because he feels himself a little bit. But hey, if I had his ability, I would feel myself too. So Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT, but Jalen Hurts is very, very good too. Very, very good quarterback. He would deserve to be in the MVP conversation. He's had a terrific year. He's incredible running. He's got a decent arm too. But what I will say is that he does have one weakness, is that if you pressure him, his incompletion percentage shoots up, and the interceptable balls shoot up percentage. So that's how the Chiefs are going to get to him. You have to pressure him. You have to pressure him. That's the only real way that you can beat the Eagles. You have to pressure him and get him to throw off his back foot or throw under pressure, and the likelihood of a turnover shoots right up if you do that. So that doesn't really exist in Mahomes, because Mahomes, in my opinion, doesn't really have any weaknesses.
Yeah, he makes all the throws, and he makes them look easy. He's mobile. So it's not like he's just this pocket quarterback, because if he needs to take off and run, he's going to take off and run. He's going to get a lot of yards. He's a warrior. He's a gamer. He went out there and played hurt. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. There's no question that there's nobody better than him. So, yeah, I mean, there's no question who the better quarterback is in this game, right? We can't say that Hurts is better. Hurts is still really good, though. But if you're gonna pick who has the edge, Kansas City. So far they've got coaching and they've got quarterback.
Okay, running back.
Now,
we've got Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, and the Eagles have Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders, and Boston Scott. I'm giving the edge to the Eagles because Miles Sanders is the best all-round running back of all of them. However, for me, Pacheco's actually had the better year than all of them. But Sanders has had a good year, man. He's rushed for 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. He had a breakout year. Gainwell was basically just been electric. And so the Eagles have far more ability at the running back position. And Boston Scott, he's usually just a Giants killer, but he's still decent too. He can operate at a high level. Also, Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round pick, has been electric, but he's mostly used in the screen game, and same with Jerick McKinnon. So they're kind of more of a gadget running backs, if you know what I mean. They're not really precisely used in difficult situations where they're needing to run in between tackles, but at times they can do so. But I think you're going to see them mostly used in the screen game or short yardage situations. However, I do believe that Edwards-Helaire has been made available. He's been taken off the IR, so maybe he would be used as well. He's maybe more of a short yardage guy in third down situations. But I like Pacheco a lot, but I'm giving the edge to the Eagles because, let's face it, it's not just those running backs. Jalen Hurts, he's basically a running back. And the thing is, if they wanted to, especially against the Giants, they could literally just run 100% of the plays, and they would have scored a ton of points, and they would have been unstoppable because we just could not get close, and we could not tackle them. We couldn't get anywhere near any of them when they're running, and it was the same against the 49ers. And they're just terrifying. The run game is terrifying. So the Eagles are very much a big advantage in this one.
I agree. Taking Philly. Sanders is great. They can go with Gainwell if they wanted to. Jalen Hurts can run at any moment as well. They can do whatever they want on offense. And that's just the kind of offense they are. That's how good they are. They can do whatever they want. So if they want to run all 4 or 5 plays, whatever it might be on a drive, and pick up 50 yards, they can do it. That's how quick they can move the ball on the ground. And we're not even going to we can get into the receivers now. I'm taking Philly there as well. I'm taking the Philly receivers over. Now, if you include the tight ends in the receiver category, that's where it can get interesting because you take Kelsey over Goddard, but do you take the overall group of Philly over the overall group of Kansas City?
Yeah, this is a case where Mahomes has elevated the talent in the receiver group. Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, Sky Moore, Cole Hardman, Kadarius Toney are fine. They're all like good. They're all scheme fits and they're all fast. They've all got speed, breakaway speed, all of them. Smith-Schuster, especially Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Cole Hardman is electric. Kadarius Toney is electric. And they could also be used in end-around situations and things like that. So you might be seeing that as well. So the Chiefs are pretty deep, but they don't have the upside that the Eagles do. They've got legit 2 of the best receivers in football, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And I'm a big fan of Quez Watkins. So for me, the receiver group, it's not particularly close. It's the Eagles, man. A.J. Brown's a legitimate number 1. You can make the argument that in most other teams in the NFL, Devontae Smith would be a number 1. He's fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful receiver. So, yeah, the Eagles get the edge there, too.
Now, I think also I would give Philly this one next, the offensive line. 5 Pro Bowlers. I mean, there's no question offensive line would go to Philly.
Yeah, but I wouldn't overlook the offensive line of the Chiefs. Orlando Brown's good. Joe Thuney's good. Creed Humphreys is very good. Trey Smith was a good draft pickup. I believe he was like a 6th-round pick, and he ended up being a starter.
I wanted him. He kept falling that year. I wanted him.
Me too. Andrew Wiley, he's okay. But the Eagles' offensive line is like a force field. It's like the Great Wall of China. It's like freaking impenetrable. It's like a force field, man. It's like a Jurassic Park compound. Literally, that's the difference, man. That's why they can literally run 100% of the plays if they wanted to, and they would still score touchdowns without a question of a doubt. They're just that good. So yeah, the offensive line is the edge for the Eagles, but again, it's not a massive edge because they've done a good job for Patrick Mahomes, especially Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney.
Yeah. Well, getting Brown was huge because their offensive line was still – it was always good enough, right? But now they made it even better. And they draft so well. Like, that organization is just so well run, you can't really find a weakness. Like, from the front office from the Kansas City Chiefs, top tier. So they know how to build it. And, of course, they have one of the best quarterbacks, or the best quarterback in the NFL. And you built it around him. They built it the right way. So both good offensive lines, but I do give that edge. To me, it's an easy choice with Philly just because, like you mentioned, you can't get to them. Like, you can't get to Jalen Hurts. And if you do, thank your lucky stars because you got past 5 really good offensive linemen. Like, it's elite. It's one of the best lines I've ever seen play. So I give the edge to Philly there as well. Now we go to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line. Again, you want to
just before we go into defense, the tight ends I didn't put in with the receiver, so I'm giving the tight end edge obviously to the Chiefs because Travis Kelce.
That goes to Kelce.
Probably for me the greatest tight end of all time.
He's certainly there. I don't give him that just yet. I think Tony G and Antonio Gates are still above him, but if he wins another one, Travis Kelce is probably third right now. You know, like, at the very least.
I mean,
he could, but it's also
it's just what he does. I've never seen before in terms of. I mean, I think he's got more to him than even Gronkowski does. You could make the argument about Shannon Sharp as well, was phenomenal, but I just think that, I'm giving the edge to him all time. I just think he's phenomenal, and he's so important to the Chiefs' offense. But yeah, let's get back to the defense.
So these are two. Well, obviously, Kansas City, they have Chris Jones. They can get to the quarterback. But Philly's pass rush, I'm giving the edge to Philly there as well. I love their defensive front. And I do think that their defensive line will cause more chaos for the Chiefs than the Chiefs' defensive line will cause chaos for the Eagles. So I'm going to give the edge there to Philly.
Okay, so here's the matchups. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Frank Clark are the main standouts for the Chiefs. The Eagles, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. Then they've got Josh Sweat, and then they've also got Ndamukong Suh, Big Sue. They're deeper, the Eagles, for sure. All their names I just listed are just sack machines. No one's had a bad year on the Eagles' defensive line, but I like the Chiefs' D line. I like Karlaftis. Karlaftis actually had a better year than Kayvon Thibodeau. Chris Jones. I love Chris Jones. That dude is a monster. He's a human wrecking ball. Frank Clark actually had a very, very good year. 5 sacks in the regular season. He normally makes a Pro Bowl each year. So I'm actually going to give the edge to the Chiefs, partly because they're a good fit. Spagnuolo. And for me, Chris Jones has had a better year than any of the Eagles guys that I mentioned. I think Chris Jones is just sensational. Absolute human wrecking ball.
Now, you're not including the edge rushers there, are you? Because you forgot Hassan Reddick.
I am not including the edge rushers yet.
Okay.
No, I'm focusing on the D line itself. We can get into the linebackers after.
Well, if that's the case, then I'm still going to give a slight edge to Philly there, but you got a pretty convincing argument there, though. But I'm going to stick with what I said. I'm going to go slight edge to Philly. I think they have the overall better group, but Kansas City, once again, none of these, with the exception of maybe the tight end or like in the quarterback, like you can say no question Mahomes over Hurts, no question Kelce over Goddard. But even then, like Hurts is still really good and Goddard's really good. But a lot of these decisions are close. Like you can't really say like they're so much better that you have to take Philly. Like even the offensive line conversation, they're both good. Yeah. Just that Philly's better. So here I'm going to give that slight edge to Philly, but this is telling me this game is going to be close.
It's very.
I think this is going to be a really good game. So now let's talk about the edge rushers.
Okay, let's do it. So the Chiefs. The Mike linebacker, they've got Nick Bolton. I love Nick Bolton. Got Carlos Dunlap and Willie Gay. Bit of a drop-off at the edge linebackers. Outside linebackers. The Eagles, TJ Edwards, who we all love in the offseason, is their Mike linebacker. And then Kazir White and Hassan Reddick on the outside. So I love Nick Bolton. Willie Gay's okay. Carlos Dunlap is a veteran. The Eagles, TJ Edwards is phenomenal, and Hassan Reddick has had a huge career so far in Philadelphia, and he's made the Pro Bowl this year. So I'm giving the edge to the Eagles purely because they have Hassan Reddick. And TJ Edwards and Nick Bolton are kind of a wash. I think I love Nick Bolton. I think he's been fantastic for the Chiefs. He's got a very important role to play if the Chiefs are to win this game. But yeah, I'm giving the edge to the Eagles.
Same here. I'm giving that to Philly. I've been saying it all year. I can't find a weakness on their team.
they
And
don't have
their edge rushers might, and their pass rush in general, but the fact that Hassan Reddick was available to everybody and signed for so cheap and had this kind of year, and this is with them dropping him into coverage a lot. Like, he doesn't even just rush the passer every play. He has 16 sacks on the year, and he doesn't even rush the passer every play. This guy is, he was a steal of the offseason. He might have been the best signing that anyone could have made. That's how good he's been for Philly. Another good conversation here is the cornerback room, because Philly's got Slay and Bradbury, very good duo. Again, the weaknesses for that Eagles defense aren't really there.
Mhm.
But then you look at the Chiefs, they got McDuffie, Sneed's there. They got a good group as well. So I still lean Philly, though. It's not an easy choice again, but I do lean Philly.
Yeah, I think so too. They've also got C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
Bradbury, Slave, Vontae Maddox, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, ridiculous safety, unstoppable. James Bradbury, we know very well as Giant fans, absolute lockdown corner. Darius Slay as well, lockdown corner. Vontae Maddox, decent slot guy. The Chiefs, though, they are definitely not struggling in that department. L'Jarius Sneed. Trent McDuffie was a phenomenal draft selection. Holy God, he's so good. Don't sleep on Jalen Watson. Justin Reed, solid. Juan Thornhill as well. Good secondary group. I like both, but I'm giving it to the Eagles as well.
And that would leave the safety room, which the Eagles, once again, they got good safeties. Now the Chiefs, Justin Reed, Johnson's in there as well. Thornhill, Deion Bush. I like Kansas City's group, but again, I hate saying so much good about Philly, right? But I've been giving them so much credit. It pains me. But again, their defense, very good. Blankenship, who's that, right? He's having a great year. You mentioned these guys already in the cornerback conversation, so I guess you want to put a whole secondary as the pick here. You'd still pick Philly.
Yeah, I would.
Do we want to go special teams? Like, who do we
Yeah,
pick?
special teams, I think it's clearly the Chiefs. I think Harrison Butker and Tommy Townsend are better than Jake Elliott, Brett Kern. They've got decent return guys. Sky Moore had a good return, obviously, which questionable because there was an illegal block in the back that should have been called. But apart from that, he's a decent return guy, better than Boston Scott. So you can even mix in Kadarius Toney as well as a possible dangerous returner if called upon. Yeah, for me, the Chiefs have a far clear, better special team unit.
I agree. I'm going to give that one to Kansas City as well. So that only leaves one final thing. Who's winning this game, and what's the final score?
So when scouting the Eagles don't have any weaknesses. And that's what's terrifying. That's what, when we were looking at the Giants game against the Eagles and we're looking for a matchup, they just don't have any weaknesses. And that's terrifying. I've never come across that. I very rarely have come across a team that have zero weaknesses. They just don't. They're just good at everything. If they want to run the ball, they can literally run 100% of the time because they've got a great offensive line. They've got good running backs and good play calling as well. Got a quarterback who's a really good runner of the football too. If they just want to pass the ball, you can look at Dallas Goedert. You could want to look at their receiving options and AJ Brown, Kez Watkins, Devontae Smith. They could do that too. Their defense, most of their D line all have like double-digit sacks, most of them. So they don't have a weakness. It's kind of scary. That said, they don't have Patrick Mahomes. And the thing is, even though I give the edge to the Eagles and like position-to-position breakdown, it isn't a massive edge. What I love about what the Chiefs have done in the offseason is like, okay, we couldn't afford to keep Tyreek Hill. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the draft. and we're gonna build through the draft, and we're just gonna bring in dudes who can elevate their game with Patrick Mahomes, and high upside guys, and that's what they've done. And they had a great draft. I mean, you can just go through it. I mean, I think Karloftis was a good selection. Pacheco was a good selection. McDuffie is an absolutely unbelievable selection. They just did very, very, very well. Yeah, there's not a big difference between the two. So, with that said, I'm going to give the edge to the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. It's going to be very, very close. It could be like 30-24, but I think the Chiefs are going to do it. It's going to go right to the wire. It's the two best teams in football, and it's going to be a great Super Bowl. I mean, the only three teams for me who are Super Bowl worthy at the start were the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Eagles. Right? I didn't think any other team in the NFC were good enough to win a Super Bowl. So I think the Eagles were always going to make the Super Bowl. And it was always going to be between the Bengals and the Chiefs, the two best teams in football for me. I think the Chiefs were worthy winners of the championship game. And I think Mahomes is going to slightly edge Jalen Hurts. I think he's got more in his bag. I think he's just got that little bit more, that little bit something special, as long as he's healthy. The only thing that I'm worried about is I've heard some updates that like there's a little flu going around with the Chiefs, and that Chris Jones is fighting a flu.
Oh,
And I've heard that L'Jarius Sneed is dealing with a concussion, and his status is unclear. That could affect. Well, that will affect how things are played. If Chris Jones is having a battling a flu, that could seriously impact things because he needs to be a human wrecking ball if they stand a chance, and L'Jarius Sneed needs to be healthy if they stand a chance. But I'm working on the assumption that they're going to be fine, and I think the Chiefs are going to do it.
so I said before we started this whole preview that our Super Bowl picks could very well come down, or our playoff picks can very well come down to the last game because we're tied. And it will, because I am picking the Eagles to win this game. I think they are too good. I've been saying this all year. I hate it because you can see I'm covered in giant blue. I got giant stuff around me all over the place. I despise this Eagles team so much, but I got to take the giant fandom off for a second and just go purely from a football fan's perspective. I think the Eagles are the better team, and I think it's going to come down to the wire, like you said. I think there's going to be a lot of points. I think that if I had to pick a defense to make a big play to maybe seal the deal, it would be Phillies more than I would pick Kansas City's to do so. And I think it's going to be the Eagles winning this one. I got it going 31-27.
Right. You got 31-27. I'm going to go with 33-26 to the Chiefs.
All right. So it'll be very interesting to see who takes home the playoff picks crown this year. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one, though. And I hate the fact that it's the Eagles, and I hope I'm wrong. But at this point, I've already seen them win a championship a few years ago. It's not going to hurt me if they win another. I mean, not as much. So if they win, good for them. They deserve it because they're a hell of a team. And if Kansas City wins, good for them. They're a hell of a team. They deserve it. You can't say that these teams don't deserve to be here. That's the good thing.
That's what I'm saying.
They didn't luck into it. Yeah, they're the two best teams in football going at it. And it should be a hell of a game. And as a football fan, that's all we can ask for is we want to see a good game, start to finish, excitement, enjoy the Super Bowl, despite who may be in it on the NFC side. So that is going to wrap it up for us here at Nerding Out Sports. Fun discussion. We'll see after the Super Bowl who gets the win in the picks, who's the champion, and then we can finally get started on what's going to be a very exciting offseason for our New York Football Giants, because that's all we care about here is the big blue New York Giants. Also, I don't know how we overlooked this, but congratulations to our head coach, Brian Dable, took home the Coach of the Year award last night. We knew it was going to happen. Much deserved. I think I speak for the entire Giants fan base when I say, Coach, we love you. Thank you for everything you've done in just 1 year, and we can't wait to see what you have in store for us in year 2.
I love you, Dave.
Major
Thank you so much.
congratulations. We love you,
Savior
Dave.
of our franchise.
Yes.
Forever, thank you.
Thank you. We love you, Dave. It's a big tip of the
Thank you
cap
so
to you. So,
much. I love you.
and we love you too, Wink, because he's going to be back. It is going to be a fun discussion after the Super Bowl, and it's going to be fun to break down the offseason to come. But that is going to be it for us here. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, follow us on the Twitter. All those handles are in the description. Follow the channels as well. Big Blue in the Bronx. You can see Donald with Alex and Luca. And I believe tonight they're going to have a Knicks show as well, so check that out. Point to that New York logo as much as you want because Big Blue, it's all about the New York Giants here. We'll see you all again very soon. Let's go, G-Men. Peace out.